Maybe a week ago or so, I heard the news The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was cancelled. My first reaction was, Stephen Colbert still a thing? And then I quickly thought, wait, late night TV still a thing? Late night TV initially began as an obvious evolution from late night radio, which goes back as far as the 1940s. But I think it's commonly accepted now that the golden age of the format was the late 80s through the 90s, with guys like Leno and Letterman. Late night TV is basically a variety show. Sometimes you get music performances, sometimes you get an interview with a guest, sometimes it's stand-up comedy. Often it's all three. The pace and tone of the show is set by the style of the host, and its primary appeal is in the viewer feeling like they're being directly spoken to by the broadcast. Late night during its prime was mainly watched by the boomers. My generation, the millennials, had little interest in it. That is, until Jon Stewart, anyway. Stewart took over as the host of The Daily Show in 1999, and refocused the show to more strictly take a news parody format. He would play the part of a news anchor, presenting the day's news, but turning headlines into comedy bits. This necessarily means political humor, and considering this was the 2000s, the American political zeitgeist revolved around the War on Terror, and the day's big political targets were the George Bush-era neocons. Stewart's wit and sarcasm effortlessly shredded guys like Bush, Cheney, McCain, Romney, and a lot of millennials during their teens and early 20s had their first exposure to real politics through The Daily Show during this period, a fact that understandably caused Stewart some distress, because he was first and foremost a comedian, not an actual journalist or politician. Nonetheless, The Daily Show was held in high regard at the time, because there were real problems with Bush-era Republicans, and the purpose of a comedian in any society is to be able to make fun of those in power. This is the whole court jester mocks the king thing, and it's also why tyrants tend to crack down on comedy. The Daily Show was popular enough that multiple of its contributors, called correspondents on the show, like John Oliver and Stephen Colbert, ended up getting their own shows. Also, Olivia Munn was on there for a little bit, back in like 2010. Anyone remember that? She bailed out of G4 for the Daily Show gig, which was probably the right move on her part, but she was there for like a dozen episodes, then unceremoniously vanished. Whoops. By 2015, Jon Stewart had decided to retire from The Daily Show. The political landscape had changed, as had the consumption habits of the demographic his show catered to. It was just time to move on. The Daily Show was handed to Trevor Noah, a millennial himself, and in my opinion this was basically the moment that late night began its long, slow death, which we are now finally witnessing. Trevor Noah was just not very funny. Yes, The Daily Show was, by the very nature of it being a parody news show, extremely political, but there were still jokes in there, you know? There was still stuff to laugh at. But Noah just wasn't funny. He used the show as a political soapbox, which Stewart did as well, but the jokes just weren't there. It ceased being a comedy show, and it turned into a political messaging show. The Daily Show limped along until 2022, when Noah finally packed it in. The usual anti-woke slop tubers declared this to be a great victory in the culture war, because that is the only lens they analyze anything through. Throughout 2023, The Daily Show had random guest hosts, but in 2024, Jon Stewart came back. And you know what? I've watched some of the new stuff, and he's still got it. He's older and slower, sure, we all are, and the political situation is different, but he can still tell a good joke. And that's really all I wanted out of The Daily Show, that it just be fucking funny, and not preachy all the goddamn time. But I'm not here to talk about Jon Stewart, I'm supposed to be talking about Stephen Colbert. During Colbert's tenure on The Daily Show, and later his spin-off, The Colbert Report, he played the part of a right-wing propagandist. His character was a satire of a Fox News host. He was actually really good at this. So good, in fact, he was invited to lampoon George Bush to his face during the 2006 White House Correspondents' Dinner, because they believed he was legitimately right-wing. I cannot overstate how big of a deal this was, guys. Colbert roasting George Bush to his face was probably the internet's first truly political viral video, in the way that we understand virality today, and it heavily influenced Obama's 2008 campaign to focus on the internet over TV and radio. When Letterman retired from The Late Show, Colbert was brought on in 2015 to continue his legacy. However, now he wasn't playing his right-wing pundit character. He was just Stephen Colbert, the comedian. And frankly, without that angle, he was just not nearly as funny. Due to Colbert's experience with political comedy, The Late Show shifted towards having a more political focus. But without Colbert's gimmick, it devolved into what The Daily Show had become under Trevor Noah, political soapboxing. Basically, nobody's been watching any of this shit since like 2016. In 2006, 2008, 2010, I was hearing from my friends constantly, "Hey, do you see last night's Daily Show? Have you seen this clip from the Colbert Report? Yeah, let me show you." That never happens anymore. The only time I've heard something like that in the past 10 years was because people are laughing at them, not with them. People tune in to watch these shows self-destruct, not because they actually like them. Case in point, do you guys recall that one part where Colbert danced with a bunch of people dressed as vaccine needles? Where's the joke here exactly? Okay, forget about whether you're pro or anti-vax for a second. Personally, I'm pro-vax, but it doesn't matter. What is Colbert actually doing here? Is he making fun of people who won't get the COVID vaccine? There's lots of ways you can make jokes at the expense of anti-vaxxers, but I don't see any of them here. Is the joke that he and his backup dancers look ridiculous? If that's the case, that seems more like an anti-vax position, you know what I mean? Like, if Colbert was still playing his right-wing nutjob character on The Late Show, and in character, he wanted to do a caricature of left-wing vax worshippers, this is exactly the type of thing that he would do. And it would be funny, but he's not playing that character now. This is just who he is. Is the joke just that he's simply being silly? Well, okay, I get it. You get a quarter of a chuckle out of me just because you look stupid. And since I know none of you guys have actually watched this shit, it's a safe bet that dance number is the only thing that you've seen, since it went viral on Twitter. But did you know? Colbert performed various vaccine serenades all throughout COVID. None of these were funny. None of these made light of the situation or took aim at anybody involved. The joke was just Stephen Colbert sings about vaccines. Isn't that wacky, guys? Also, make sure to go and get them. For all the flack I gave Trevor Noah earlier, at least he had the balls to take a swing at how haphazard the COVID messaging actually was back in the day.
The really frustrating thing about this chart is that they've spent 5 months telling us to get vaccinated. Oh, get vaccinated, and this will all be over. Get vaccinated. And I was like, great, I'll get all the 4 vaccines if it means I'll get my life back. But now they're putting out a chart, and it says even if you get vaccinated, you can only do 2 more things without a mask on? 2? Guys, what the hell? The shit you're saying to people is incoherent. You're telling us these new vaccines are 95% effective and will stop coronavirus, but we still can't do anything without a mask on. Which is it? Is this one of the most effective vaccines in the history of the world, or does it not work? It's not clear messaging, especially if you're desperately trying to convince people to get the vaccine. Can you imagine if every time you ordered an Uber, oh, your Uber's coming in 5 minutes, but maybe also get a lift, just in case.
Here's a different Colbert clip, which went viral back in February 2024. And again, not because people are laughing with him. It was posted with the caption, Stephen Colbert projecting his unhinged Trump derangement syndrome on national television.
I know how numb we've become, but it's not normal. No other candidate for the presidency has ever had to pause his campaign to defend himself in multiple courts. And I would like to point out that in all 7 of his cases, no one doubts that he did these things. We're just sitting around patiently waiting to find out if the wheels of justice will grind fast enough for there to be any consequences. And the media is covering it like it's any other political story, like it's all horse race.
Now, everything Colbert said here is correct, but that's not the point. Where's the funny? Nobody tunes into this show for real political analysis. They watch to be entertained. This type of grandstanding is not Colbert's job. Where are the fucking jokes, bro? This is, in part, why late night is dying. Sure, young people now don't watch late night TV at 10 or 11 p.m. before going to bed, like the boomers did back in the 80s. But there's no reason that these shows can't create YouTube channels and upload their stuff there. In fact, they do just that. No, the consumption habits of their potential audience is not the problem. The problem is that they're just not funny anymore, and they believe their job is to propagandize their audiences rather than entertain them. This goes way beyond Colbert and The Late Show. Like, for example, do we really need to see Jimmy Kimmel cry after Trump won 2024?
For our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency.
Actually, that is a little funny, not gonna lie. Even as a never Trumper, laughing at this performative virtue signaling doesn't get old. But the point I'm making is that these guys are operating under the mistaken belief that they're being paid to create and maintain a political, cultural hegemony, when in actuality, their job is to make people laugh. And if there's no laughs, there's no audience, and if there's no audience, there's no job. That is a big reason as to why The Late Show got cancelled and Colbert got shit-canned. Nobody's watching anymore. And while a big part of why nobody's watching is political, they prioritize message over comedy, sure. But at the same time, if he had those political views and still managed to make a funny show, he'd probably be a lot more successful. There may be people out there protesting Colbert getting taken off the air, but not enough of these people are actually watching him, and that's what really matters. Of course, Colbert's supporters are claiming he's being fired for his criticism of Trump, that he's being silenced by a tyrant, that this is political. Well, I mean, everything's political, remember. But okay, let's consider that point of view. On the one hand, this position is being overwhelmingly pushed by partisan Democrats, who are all reacting as if they've just lost one of their chief propagandists. It actually made me pause, seeing just how many Democrat elected officials have come out and said that Colbert getting cancelled isn't just business as usual for a network trying to trim the fat, but it's an attack on comedy, on free speech, on democracy. Is this really the only way we can save democracy from the fascists, guys? To funnel unlimited amounts of money into failing shows that no one watches anymore? However, on the other hand, Trump's October 2024 lawsuit against CBS has been working its way through the courts. In that suit, Trump claimed that footage of Kamala Harris's 60 Minutes interview was deceptively edited to make Trump look bad. Yeah, it's not like Trump himself was deceptively edited, or anything like that. The claim is that Kamala was edited to make her comments on Trump look worse than they were, which frankly I don't understand the complaint here. It's obvious that Kamala does not like Trump. She doesn't need to be edited to make it sound worse. And to be honest, it's pretty authoritarian of Trump to swing his presidential weight around at news organizations who report on his political opponents in a way he doesn't like. I went back and watched that 60 Minutes Kamala interview. There was no deceptive editing harmful to Trump that even comes close to any sort of legal infraction. The lawsuit is literally just Trump punishing people who dare to speak out against him. Ultimately, CBS settled with Trump out of court for $16 million. And in the settlement, they explicitly state they know the case is bullshit, but they just want to get it fucking done with. This settlement went through on July 2nd, 2025. Colbert was on vacation from The Late Show until July 14th, and when he came back, he blasted his own parent company, CBS, for paying the $16 million, calling it a big fat bribe towards Trump. This entire time, CBS has been trying to merge with Skydance Media, and approval from Trump's government is what's holding it up. At the same time, the CEO of Skydance is David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison, a longtime friend and supporter of Trump. So Colbert blasted CBS for basically paying Trump off.
Now, I believe this kind of complicated financial settlement with a sitting government official has a technical name in legal circles. It's big fat bribe. Because this all comes as Paramount's owners are trying to get the Trump administration to approve the sale of our network to a new owner, Skydance.
And 2 days later, on July 16th, CBS announced that The Late Show would be canceled.
They clarified that the cancellation was purely a financial decision. But how could it purely be a financial decision if The Late Show is #1 in ratings?
Now, to me, that certainly sounds like it could be politically motivated, although CBS obviously denies it. Another piece of evidence to consider, though, is that Colbert and his team were told by CBS back on July 2nd that his show was costing the company $40 million a year.
Over the weekend, somebody at CBS followed up their gracious press release with a gracious anonymous leak saying they pulled the plug on our show because of losses pegged between $40 million and $50 million a year.
Colbert's contract was $20 million of that, and he's also got a staff of 200 people to make this thing. Yes, they were burning that much money to make such incredible comedy as Dances with Vaxes. So you know what? Maybe it's all of this stuff combined. CBS is bleeding money and Colbert's an expense. CBS needs to be friends with Trump and Colbert's a hindrance. CBS needs an audience, and nobody finds Colbert funny anymore. CBS needs to merge with Skydance and Trump can give them that merger. There's no reason it can't be all of these things at once. Once again, the anti-woke slop tubers declared this another victory. It has to be culture war stuff, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe to beat the wokies. And okay, while some of this is going to boil down to the audience just not liking Colbert's virtue signaling anymore, I do think that more of it should be attributed to CBS playing nice with Trump, and more importantly, CBS wanting to make money. Possibly the most shocking thing of all was Trump's own message on the subject, where he posted over on Truth Social that he loves that Colbert got fired, and he wants Jimmy Kimmel gone next. On the one hand, yeah, all of these late night hosts' days are numbered. It's a dead medium nowadays. Mid-level YouTubers get more eyeballs than late night at this point. But more importantly, Trump himself is kinda acting like an anti-woke slop tuber, which, while funny in how ridiculous and kind of pathetic it is, it's also dangerous, considering that Trump isn't an anti-woke slop tuber. He's the fucking president. I recall a lot of people on the right saying during Biden's term that power cannot be neutral, that any expression of a preference by power, no matter how benign, cannot be viewed as the personal wishes of the man in charge, but an explicit declaration of policy.
The only thing that matters is what? Chat. What matters? Anyone? Power. Power. You can see what I'm out. Power. That is all that matters. No, it doesn't, man. We have a system of checks and balances. That's a good one. That's really funny.
This idea is known as the Turbulent priest phenomenon, after King Henry II of England. When the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, excommunicated several bishops who supported the king exclaimed, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" Now, this wasn't a direct order from the king. It was an expression of exasperation. But nonetheless, 4 knights killed Becket and claimed to be fulfilling the wishes of the king. The idea here is that any benign wish a ruler expresses must be interpreted as a covert command towards his subordinates, because the ruler may need to maintain plausible deniability. As a result, due to the nature of political power, rulers can never actually express benign wishes at all. They must always be taken seriously. I understand this idea, and it's certainly true sometimes, but right-wingers rely on it to explain everything, and yet they are extremely inconsistent in its use. For example, they regularly use this logic when describing the 2014 Nuland-Ukraine phone call. In a leaked phone call between American State Department official Victoria Nuland and U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Piat, the two gave their opinion on various Ukrainian political leaders and who they personally believed should be a part of Ukraine's next government.
I don't think cleats should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
We want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience.
Now, despite it being mentioned in the call that this was their own views, and that Ukrainians should ultimately be left alone to decide their own fate, right-wingers constantly bring this up as proof that the USA meddled in Ukraine's affairs, because power cannot be neutral. Those in power cannot express benign preferences, and be okay with having that preference go unfulfilled. Nuland's casual comments were interpreted by the right as ironclad proof that America acted in Ukraine to assert its interests, using the turbulent priest principle. Well, if you do believe that, what should we take from this post by Trump then? Trump's supporters might be laughing along with the shitposter-in-chief, but he's not just a shitposter. He's the president. He's the sovereign authority. He is the one who wields power. Under the turbulent priest principle, should this message not be considered a demand from the office of the presidency that Jimmy Kimmel be fired? Should it not be viewed as a threat towards ABC, the network that hosts Jimmy Kimmel Live? The reply from some right-wingers will be that I'm being paranoid. I'm hearing dog whistles where they don't exist. And to them I would say, what happened to the turbulent priest? What happened to power not being neutral? Meanwhile, other right-wingers will just be honest and say, you know what? It's good that Trump's attacking comedians. And to them I would say, what happened to standing up against all the censors? The tyrants who come for the court jester first? What happened to legalizing comedy?
The left wanted to make comedy illegal, Like, you can't make fun of anything. So then it was like, comedy sucks. It's like, nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like, legalize comedy. Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't really care about Stephen Colbert, or Trevor Noah, or any of these other unfunny hacks. If they're not pulling in numbers, their show should be cancelled, simple as that. I also don't really care that late night TV is dead. I might be a bit nostalgic for the format, but I've moved on, and so has everyone else. However, I find the utter glee that right-wingers have, as they watch their political opponents get crushed, as they misinform their own audiences as to why, and as they break all of their stated principles when it comes to comedy or hypocrisy. I find it all to be pretty disturbing. Like, yeah, okay, we all agree, the Colbert vax shit was cringe as fuck. But you know what's also cringe? Rewatching Colbert talk to Kamala Harris, and cackling that they're both irrelevant now. Like, what are you doing, bro? Sure, it's funny that they both destroyed their own careers with their hubris. But you know what? Politics and resentment are playing an extremely unhealthy role in your life. If you ever find yourself going back to watch Colbert reruns while calling it fun, you gotta touch some fucking grass, dude. In the same vein, I've seen right-wingers say, Colbert's not funny anymore. Jon Stewart's not funny anymore. You know who does good political comedy nowadays? Gutfeld. And my first reaction was, who the fuck is Gutfeld? After looking him up, it turns out he does the news political comedy thing, like everyone else we've talked about today. But this time he does it from a right-wing, pro-Trump perspective, over on Fox News. And now having watched a few episodes of his stuff, you know what? He's not fucking funny either. Gutfeld's show is the most pandering, sycophantic nonsense I've seen in a long time. Not even their in-studio audience gives a shit. Just listen.
Hey, I'm not making her eat Twinkies. But I would. So apparently firing Stephen Colbert, who was paid $20 million a year while his show lost $50 million, it wasn't due to economics. It was fascism. That, according to all the Democrats currently white knighting for him. Because you recall from history class, the first thing Adolf Hitler did was cancel Late Night with Shecky von Bismarck.
You know, at least The Daily Show rose up to some type of height before finally falling off. Gutfeld started at the bottom and never left. What makes Gutfeld unwatchable is the same type of thing that makes Colbert unwatchable. The extent of their comedy is us good, them bad, with no actual substance to it. If there's anybody in this space who's actually still good at this stuff, it's probably Bill Maher. He's personally left-leaning, obviously, but he has no problem flamethrowing his own camp when it does some ridiculous stuff, which is exactly how comedy should be. In fact, when Maher was asked about this relationship between comedy focused on the left and comedy focused on the right, he pretty much repeated my own views on the subject.
To those on the right who keep asking me, Bill, you're so good at roasting the woke nonsense peddlers, why don't you go all the way and join us? Let me give you the short answer. Because I don't want to live in North Korea. Kim Jong-un has state stenographers who follow him everywhere and scribble his genius ideas into their notebooks and applaud. Well, Republicans, that's you now.
Look, a real message with actual comedy mixed in. Colbert should be taking notes. I've also personally found that a lot of right-wingers think I am way more right-wing than I actually am, just because I laugh at woke progressive nonsense. Sorry guys, wanting big tits back in my video games doesn't mean that I'm somehow a Trump dick rider, and I've spent a lot of energy over the past year desperately trying to dissuade people of that mistaken view. I hate the communists, but I hate MAGA just as much. Gonna be honest here, I don't exactly know how Colbert lost his edge. Some of you guys might disagree with this, but go back to his animated series lambasting Trump from 2018, Our Cartoon President, and there's some pretty funny satire in that. Meanwhile, you fast forward to 2025 and it's all gone.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
Oh man, you got him. Mic drop, boom, pwned, oh snap, it's so over. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, man? Watching all the other late night hosts rally around Colbert is kinda like watching horse and buggy peddlers protesting the creation of the first automobile. Entertainment's just moving on from the format, guys. They're gonna have to adapt with the times or die off like the fossils you are. Of course, it doesn't help that their detractors are also partisan hacks as well. Like, for example, Jon Stewart did this choir music dancing bit in support of Colbert on our recent Daily Show. And meanwhile, you've got guys like this saying, imagine showing this to Stewart in 2008 and telling him this was his future. Tell me you were never actually a real Daily Show fan without telling me, bro. This has been one of Jon's ongoing bits stretching back decades. I just don't like any of where we are right now. Late night comedians aren't funny anymore because they think shitting on Trump is all you need to be funny, with the exception of Bill, love you babe, while the detractors of the comedians are entirely unable to actually laugh at their own side when their own side is at fault. Instead, they scream and cry about how the old giants of comedy they used to love have fallen off, or occasionally they say they were backstabbed by them. Hell, look at South Park.
South Park really jumped the shark in its premiere episode today. It is something that you look at and you go, what are they even trying to say? Because their messaging doesn't make sense. And that's exactly what the left does every single time they try to do one of these message things. It never makes any sense. So they cover it up with just like crude humor and, of course, just making fun of Donald Trump and his member over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. South Park's earned their ire too. For years, South Park has been shitting on progressives, making jokes about trans issues, making jokes about migrants, and left-leaning people have been shitting themselves that South Park is bigoted, and if you still watch it, you never grow to that edgy childhood phase. Meanwhile, right-leaning people have called it a breath of fresh air. We can still be edgy, guys. Those South Park boys know what comedy is. But now that South Park has made jokes about Trump in its most recent season, OMG, South Park fell off. How could you attack Trump? We never actually liked you. South Park was always leftist. It's all so tiring. Once again, Maher said it best.
These bills they've introduced to make Trump's birthday a holiday and put him on currency and Mount Rushmore. This is not what we do here, guys. He's still in office, for God's sake. Can we see how it turns out before we put him on a stamp? If I admit that there is a level of Trump derangement syndrome on the left, will you admit that this shit is also deranged? All the people on the right who say they certainly don't agree with me on everything, but they respect the way I keep it real about the left and like me because I'm honest, well, that's a two-way street.
What makes comedy funny is not related to whether or not it targets your sacred cow. In fact, if you're pissed off by an edgy joke, it's probably making somebody else out there laugh their ass off, because your pearl-clutching reaction is a part of the humor. I have watched far too many people on the left say, you can't joke about LGBTQ, you're a bigot. And I have watched far too many people on the right say, bring back comedy. Oh, but don't make fun of any events that I personally care about, I'm gonna cancel you. Fuck both of you guys. I am not your friend, and you are part of the problem. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys today. I don't quite know what I'm doing going forward. If you're gonna see more 10-minute takes like this, or more long-form videos like my recent stuff, I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do next. I guess I'll just dick around and see how it feels. If you want to see more dev, I uploaded a couple of midnight movie vlogs on the side channel, Superman and Jurassic World, and also the channel back end tells me that YouTube suppressed my most recent big video, the one on collective shout versus no mercy, presumably because of the content matter. So if that video didn't hit your homepage, click the link on screen and I'll see you over there. Have a good one, guys. I love you.